Henry's quick thinking. So Topham Hatt's railway was in a muddle. There have been so many mishaps and incidents that hundreds of rail workers have been beginning to resign. With the remaining workers scattered, the engines found their life difficult. Edward's branch line got the worst of all. Great Waterton Station was understaffed that it took hours for passengers to get it from the station and even mail trains to be delivered. This meant that Henry had to speed his passenger runs between stations. Henry was getting exhausted and trying to keep up the lost time. One morning, Henry skittled into Napper Station with his goods train to find Edward spizzicated on something in the distance. Henry said hello. "What's wrong, Edward?" said Henry. Edward snapped out of his trance. "Oh, sorry, Henry," said Edward. "I was trying to keep an eye on them." "On who?" "Look over there," said Edward. Henry looked. Far in the distance was beginning to get closer and closer with a crowd of people with signs. Henry looked. Far in the distance was beginning to be closer and closer with a crowd of people with signs and wavers. Their yelling could be heard for miles as they marched up to the Napper Station. Soon, the crowd started calling up to the engines. "You stevedores have a harm to the environment," said one. "You aren't eco-friendly," said another. "Diesels are cleaner, not you. And have you no compassion for the land around you? Your lines go through the forest. You're hazardous to it." Soon the last comment stuck to Henry. He looked at his buffers. "Take no notice," said Edward. "I think your lovely green paint looks better than the greens and trees." "Your green paint looks lovely against the plants and trees." "Oh, well, thank you, Edward," said Henry, and he left for his goods train. With little working to intervene, the protesters soon crowded on the platform. They soon crowded around Edward. "You're too old and toxic to be in service," said one. "You disturb a wildlife around you. You harm the ecosystem." "I may not know your viewpoint," he scolded, "but howling your scorns at those who won't listen isn't the answer." "Well, we'll make you listen," said one of the crowd, and soon moved out of the way so Edward can pop out of the station with his passenger train. Edward, exhausted from the delays, was furious. He soon spoke to Sir Topham Hatt, who was right by timid sheds. "Men and women were been roaming our station," said Edward. "They claim we're harmful to the environment and will necessarily bother us. I propose that we keep some of the workman area where the crowds are the largest. They'll help quiet down the chaos." Sir Topham Hatt frowned. "We haven't the workmen to spare, I'm afraid," he said. "And I am well aware of the protesters and the unrest they cause. But you must remember, Edward, that the biggest threat posed to them is to themselves. We will put signs up, but the rest will be in their hands." Edward disagreed on this, but he knew that he couldn't act against Sir Topham Hatt's will. The lines on the railway board had put every line on every track, reading, "Do not proceed." This did not go well. The protesters caused havoc all over the island. They blocked the engine's lines and threw rocks and stones at passing trains. steam loudly, and every processor moved out of the way. The two engines were having none of it. The next morning, Henry was pulling tankers. As he neared the station, he soon stopped by the workmen, fiddling with some signal points up ahead. "What now?" he groaned. "What's the matter?" said a fireman rudely. "We have places to be." "Stupid protesters trying to jam the points so nothing can get through," replied the workman. "As the script say," the signalman. Henry the driver was furious. "But don't worry," said the signalman. "They did jam the points, but to stick on the main line by mistake." "Phew," said a fireman. "Still the problem," considered Edward. "But one thing we can work around. I'm about getting sick and tired of these hooligans." "We all have," said the signalman. "Hope you don't get tired of it soon." Henry whistled with the green man and was on his way. When Henry arrived at Edward's station, his driver and fireman soon uncoupled the trucks and ran Henry into a siding. They went off to lunch, but Henry soon popped into the shed. He soon dozed off into the sunlight and went to sleep. But he soon woken up by the person speaking. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" said the one. "Certainly. The kettle's on guard. We'll take it up the branch line and dump it into the sea." Henry woke up to see a group of protesters huddled around him. "It's a hijack there," they won, and quickly boarded Henry. Henry's driver and fireman didn't notice because they was at eating lunch. But some have stood on the footplate holding the handrails for the grip, and the rest of them had got into Henry's cab to drive to him. They soon pulled the lever, and Henry roared into a life. Henry was shocked as he moved and moved without stopping himself. "Hey, wait a minute. What do you three protesters are doing?" "Getting rid of you, green lots. Ha ha." And as they shuffled Henry right out of Edward's yard, Henry's driver and fireman saw this and quickly ran up to call for help. Henry rocketed it down the line faster and faster. The protesters were delighted. First this one, then the old blue one, then the rest. No more pollution was done. Henry was frantic, but he wasn't scared. "You will regret this." Henry sped past the yards through tunnels and raced past Thomas. They soon cleared the line up ahead. Up ahead were the points had the protester had jammed, and Henry soon raced it to the siding. He saw this a member of the protester had said. He began making a plan. "The points are jammed into the siding. We're going to hit the buffers," he said. The protester was surprised. "We're going to crash! Stop him!" The protester soon put Henry's brakes on and definitely jumped out of the footplate, smashing into the ground below. They neared the siding. "Ah!" But they never came, and Henry soon stopped for himself. It came to a stop. "Start it up again," the protester said, but it was no good. Police cars soon surrounded, and the top hat was there. "These men have really charged for grand theft auto, Topham. They will be taken to court, don't worry." "No," says the Topham hat. "Leave them to me. I'll deal with them." Edward was also there, and he and Henry winked at each other. So Topham hat spoke kindly to Henry. "My Henry, your quick thinking has saved the day." Henry soon smiled, but he seethed in pain. "My brakes were squeezed on, sir," he said. "They merely have been sore." I believe a trip to the works will be done. For a hero, that's the least to be done. Henry was delighted. I must say, a good rest doesn't sound bad to me. One day, Henry was at the works. He had new brakes and was puffing splendidly as he puffed out of the works. And he arrived at the sheds and saw Edward enter top of hat. I'm glad you're back, Henry. Oh, and as for you, Edward, I would like to apologize. For what, sir? For not listening to you, of course. You managed the blaze well, and I shouldn't took your word about the protesters. I understand why, sir, but there are enough workmen to perform my idea. Not anymore, Sir Top Hat smirked. And at that point, a group of protesters had dressed in workman clothes and walked up to Edward, Henry, and Sir Topham Hatt. Edward and Henry soon recognized them as the protesters. Sir, said Henry, you hired them as workmen? This may not be the life's passion, explained Sir Topham Hatt, but with the alternative being less freedom, I believe these former protesters will be more than glad to fill our gaps. Isn't that right, lads? Ready to be really useful, said the one. Edward and Henry smiled. There was one piece at last. I think you'll be happy to know that Edward is finally back working on his branch right out the way. The real workers, meanwhile, pour their weight of honor on the railway. They might not be humble workmen, but never to protest against steam engines again. Steam engines, I believe, are quite rebellious too.